Chapter 3. We talked last week about Rahab and the spies that she held. And we talked about Joshua as he was preparing to go into the land. And we had kind of this time frame as we started that they were going to be going up in 3 days. Anybody remember where they were encamped when all of this took place in Joshua 1 and 2? Where were they going to be coming into the land of Israel? Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Anyway, so they were on the western side of the Jordan River, opposite Jericho. The actual place name we're going to find out here in chapter 3 was Acacia Grove. Woohoo! So they're in Grove City. They're across from Jericho, and they're getting ready to go in. So the spies come back, and they give their report to Joshua. And the basic report is far different than the spies brought back the first time. The spies came back and said, "Look, everybody's scared to death of us," and so there was no real dissent here. Everybody was kind of on the same page, ready to go into the land. So we pick up in chapter 3 and verse 1. Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Acacia Grove and came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they crossed over. That's okay. Then Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, "Take up the Ark of the Covenant and cross over before the people." So they took the Ark of the Covenant and went before the people. 7. Joshua 3. Sorry, I was talking to Cindy. She was lost her than you were. Behold, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over before you into the Jordan.
Now therefore take you 12 men out of the tribe of Israel, out of every tribe of the land. And as soon as the priests who carried the Ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream, will be cut off and stand up and eat.
Now, let's pause just a moment there. Somebody remind me we want to get into verse 14. So just kind of, to talk about what we've seen so far. So they're getting ready to go in. They're setting out from Acacia Grove. They're now right up against the Jordan River. And God says to Joshua, and Joshua says to the priests and the people, he said, the Ark of the Covenant's going to go first, about 1,000 yards behind it. The rest of the army's going to march. Don't get too close. That was always the instruction with the Ark of the Covenant. Don't get too close. And the priests are going to walk in, and they're going to walk into the Jordan River. Here's the deal. You've got an army of a couple 100,000 soldiers crossing the river. Where do you ford a river when you're that many people? Yeah, exactly. In the Civil War, they built pontoon bridges. In World War I, we continue to use similar technology. Today, when you need large troop movements over bodies of water, you either need a boat if it's big enough or a bridge if it's not. If you have a smaller group, you can look for a place to ford a river or a stream. You've got 20 guys. They can find a place to cross. Worst case scenario, they could swim across, though this would be a bit much to swim. But when you're dealing with a couple 100,000 troops, swimming across the river is not very practical. Especially, what's that? Right, yeah, exactly. He tried to float his army. Especially when you consider this whole generation of people have been wandering around the Sinai Peninsula, which is all desert. These are Bedouins basically at this point. In those terms, I mean, they've seen water, but anytime you see water, it's a place to drink. It's not a place to recreate. They certainly didn't swim in drinking water, and so you got a bunch of guys here who, if you marched them into deep water, you might as well just kill them. So how do you deal with a river? And so that's what the obstacle they're up against. They're on the wrong side of the river. Before, when they came up out of Egypt, they came up to Kadesh Barnea, which is on the southern entrance to the land of Canaan, and there is no river there. There's some hills, some mountains, but eminently crossable. River is a real obstacle for an army, and so the instruction is kind of unveiling to us what's going on here, and we get it finally in verse 13. The priests are going to carry the Ark of the Covenant into the water. They're going to hit the water, and then God's going to stop the river. He's going to dam the river. What's interesting is he said in verse 13, the waters are going to pile up as a heap. So you get a generation ago, the children of Israel had a water obstacle in the Red Sea, and God parted the Red Sea, and they walked through. This generation hadn't seen that miracle, but God was going to do something very similar, very visible, very cool as well, as you'll see, that the water would just, just like, invisible, force field. Goes up in place and water just keeps going up and up and up and up. You can only imagine what that looked like when it let go. So this is the scenario that's coming now, verse 14. Is that me? So it was when the people set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan, with the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant before the people.
And as they bear the ark, were coming to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped into the brim of the water, but the Jordan overfloweth all his banks at the time of harvest.
Okay, so we get a reference now. We're in harvest season, so it gives us a bit of a reference. So this is pushing it actually into what would be for us our springtime, and we're getting to a time here where the Jordan River naturally is overflooding its banks. You have the mountains to its north, flowing down into the Sea of Galilee, which swells. The river swells as everything heads down to the Dead Sea. And so here you've got the Jordan. So it's not just like a normal. It's not like the middle of summertime where the Jordan River at some points is almost gone for lack of water. It's at a time where it's at flood stage. And so the Jordan River is not just its normal depth. It's not its normal width. It's deeper. It's wider. There's more water. The obstacle's bigger. It's like God says, let me see, what is the absolute worst time to cross a river? Flood stage. That's perfect. I'll take it. So he does that. Sometimes he picks the absolute worst thing so he can show just how powerful he really is. He's not really worried about nature at all. Yes, 16. Zaratan. So imagine this picture. Now, and we even get place names. So you want to know where the barrier was? It was the city of Adam next to Zaratan. And so, if you were there, you can imagine the farmers out there working their field like, I've never seen this before. Look at that. The water just going up instead of across. And literally just cut it off like a wall, and everything south of that was dry. All the water going down to the Dead Sea just stopped. And this water just continues to pile up and pile up and pile. Can you visualize this? Do you have enough kid left in you to see this in your mind's eye? That it just, water piling up and farmers out there going, wow. Because we know where this, we even get place names. That's the awesomest part to me. It's not just it piled up somewhere. It piled up right there. Like people knew it. People saw it. There were people going, hey, remember that day that the water went straight up instead of that way? And so you get this great picture of what's going on. The net result was, though, the water piled up over there, the river stopped, and they were able to march the entire Jewish army across the Jordan River without any issues, without any difficulty at all, which was the point. And we'll keep going in chapter 4. And command them, saying, take for yourselves 12 stones from here, out of the midst of the Jordan, from the place where the priest's foot stood firm. You shall carry them over with you and leave them in the lodging place where you lodge tonight. So you get this interesting command that God gave to Joshua. Joshua passed along. Go out into the river, collect 12 stones, bear them on your shoulder, which tells you these aren't like, oh, look, here's one. Not little rocks. These are large enough that you can kind of shoulder it and bear it up. Pick up 12 stones and take them out there. Now you're going to carry them from the riverbank to wherever you camp tonight. So this is not like, drag them out 5 feet. Although, granted, they weren't going very far because they were just going to be camping outside the city of Jericho, which was not terribly far from the river itself. And so they pick them up, and when they get to the other side, they're going to assemble these stones into a memorial, and it's literally just a memorial heap. Kind of an idea that you stack them sort of, but 12 rocks, even big rocks, don't make a very big pile. It's just a heap of stones. They're probably, next to what would have now been a road. After you march a couple 100,000 people anywhere, it's a road.
I don't call this a miracle. You always hear about the Red Sea.
Yes. No, you don't.
He's dead. That still exists.
If it did, we wouldn't know, because it was literally just 12 rocks. You can go. There are probably lots of places in Israel you could find 12 rocks together. Even 12 good-sized rocks. They're not boulders because it's one guy carrying it. So you think about what's the weight limit of a rock like that. Yay big maybe, give or take. Twice the size of a football, 12 rocks that big, that you could reasonably, put on your shoulder and carry. Maybe if they're, good, strong, strapping lads, it might have been a little bit bigger. But still, you kind of limit the size by the fact that you got one guy carrying it. So it's just 12 rocks that are 12 large rocks, and they're put together and they're just assembled there, stacked as well as you can stack 12 big rocks together, and they're there on the side of the road. They were at least unique enough that the point of it was, in the generations to come, your kids will see this memorial and ask what it's there for. And you think about the monuments and memorials even on a national level that we build. What is the point of having, a Washington monument or a memorial, a Lincoln Memorial or Jefferson Memorial? What is the point of all of these things? What is the point of having a national cemetery? The point of many of these things is, one, so we don't forget because they're there. But two, it gives us points of discussion, points of conversation with our children. We've been to D.C. a couple times as a family, and one of the things that the kids wanted to see was the man and the penny. That was how, for them, I'm not sure we don't exactly carry cash or pennies, so I'm not sure where they got it. Other than very cool. Here's the guy on the penny, and look, there is the guy on the penny, the man on the penny. The Lincoln Memorial, and it creates these conversation pieces about our own history. What was the importance of Abraham Lincoln? What did he do? Why did we enshrine him so? Why do we have this great memorial? Now, we tend to overdo it a little bit. You think about this memorial versus the Lincoln Monument, just a little bit of difference in scale. But God said, put these here. It's unnatural enough, it's unique enough that in the generations to come, there's going to be these pile of rocks. And when you're leaving Jericho and heading west, you'll see this pile of rocks there. And your kids will say, hey, Dad, what's that for? Well, funny you should ask. And that really was the point of monuments and memorials as a whole. It was nothing special except that it was just these rocks that used to be in the middle of the Jordan River, and now they're on the road next, leading to the Jordan River. But it was just enough of an oddity to say, hey, there was this time. And, like you said, we don't talk about this one very often. It's like the forgotten, twin brother of the parting of the Red Sea. In some ways, I think this is cooler. We've been debating for thousands of years where the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea. We know with some certainty where they, about where they crossed the Jordan River, opposite Jericho, south of Adam, however you want to say it, Adam. Put the emphasis wherever you want. So you have, we have some certainty of where this took place. Very cool, but like you said, kind of forgotten. We don't talk about it much. And so God said, go ahead and put these stones up there to be a monument, because God did something here. This is a miracle. God did something for the children of Israel. He wanted them to remember it. And so it was just there. So anyway, let's finish up wherever we are.
And the children of Israel did so, just as Joshua commanded, and took up the 12 stones from the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord had spoken to Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them down there.
What did you just read? Because I can't find where we are. Huh? 9. Thank you. See, even I get lost. Then Joshua sent up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood, and they are there to this day. So part 2 was, he's got 12 other guys already carrying rocks. I'm assuming they're different guys because they'd have been tired. And where the priests were, which is right on the banks, which when the Jordan River is under its normal stage actually would have been on the east bank. It's only during the flood stage that this would be underwater. But where the priests were standing, they put this other pile of 12 stones. So on a normal day, there's a pile of rocks on one side of the river and there's a pile of rocks on the other side of the river. And they're both there to mark the same event.
The priests which bear the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished, that the Lord commanded Joshua to speak unto the people, according to all that Moses commanded Joshua. And the people hasted and passed over. And as soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side while the people watched.
The men of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh crossed over armed in front of the Israelites, as Moses had directed them.
Though 40,000 prepared for war crossed over before the Lord for battle, the plains of Jericho.
On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they had feared Moses all the day of his life. So another piece of this equation was, Moses had parted the Red Sea. Now Joshua's part of the Jordan River. Same. And so this was beyond everything else that was going on. This was a validation of Joshua's leadership. Supernatural God saying, see, I'm going to overcome the obstacles for him just like I did for Moses. And so it validates his leadership. The people, they already knew he was the leader. Everybody got that. Everybody understood that was God's will and God's plan and God's leading. That wasn't even a question. And yet God still takes it that one step further to validate it. So just in case there was any doubt in anybody's mind, okay, now we've crossed the Jordan River. We've seen the water over there doing its thing. Very cool. We've seen God do something incredibly miraculous on Joshua's behalf, just like he was doing before on Moses' behalf. So you have this validation of it. Not necessary, and yet still that extra step to make sure there was no question in anybody's mind.
And the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Command the priests who bear the ark of the testimony to come up
that had to have been a monstrous moment. You imagine being there, standing on the other side of the Jordan River. I mean, the priest just got out of the riverbed, and all of a sudden, it's just, this whole flushing effect as all of this water that's been piling up for however long it took them to cross the river now just descends down and into its normal channel. I'm thinking the flood stage increased at least a little bit for a minute. Had to have been a very interesting, in my mind's eye, I keep running with it, and I lack the words to share with you what I see. Hopefully you have a similarly vivid picture. And so we have them now. As you read these last couple verses, we find them in camp just outside of Jericho, getting ready to go in. But as Joe mentioned, this is a story that we typically almost overlook, because what has happened in the past has been very cool. What's going to happen at Jericho is very cool, and we missed this, which is incredibly cool, and I'm not sure why we miss it. So we decided not to skip it because it's very neat. And so we have a lot going on. God doing a miracle, God validating Joshua's leadership, God saying, hey, make sure you make a way to remember, and all that going on. Any questions, comments? Right. I mean, you've got 4 dudes just standing there carrying this, wood box that's coated in solid gold, with a big mercy seat, angels flapping their wings in gold above them. Had to have been very cool, though, because it's not something that most Israelites got to see on a normal basis. Most of the time when the Ark of the Covenant moved, it moved covered. We don't always think of that, but there was 3-4 layers of covering over top of the Ark of the Covenant on a normal basis when they traveled. And so just to be able to actually see it as they passed by, that had to have been pretty cool. But yeah, just the way to just stand there, stand in the river, like, carrying this box on your shoulders. Cool. Anything else? All right, let me pray. We'll jet. Father, we thank you for the day. We thank you, Lord, for this lesson and the fact that we can see you working generationally from Moses to Joshua, knowing that each generation that serves you comes up and you do miraculous things for them, with them, through them, to them. Father, help us to take courage in that, because we're the generation that stands to serve you now. Father, help us to find ways to remember the things that you do in our midst. Lord, we ask this morning that you would be in our presence, that you would enable, empower us as we sing and worship you. Father, that you would receive our praise as a father who loves to hear from his children. And then, Lord, would you help us to hear from you so that we could leave this place and that we can actually go and live for you and serve you in this generation. Well, thank you in Jesus' good name.